Nicely done.
Yeah,
Nicely done.
Just enough to get the point across that this film was obviously animated for the cinema, but without triggering the death of my channel via copyright.
Yeah, without leaving us talking to ourselves and messages in the chat of "You've gone, where have you gone?"
Yeah.
Unless we all want to get round and sing the line "Sleeps Tonight" at some point, That's...
So I can't sing, but I'll always can't walk to that one.
We'll all do that one.
So hello and welcome to this episode of Media Musings. Anyone who's lurking in the chat and or watching in the future. Today we are talking about the middle Disney Renaissance through the lens of The Lion King, which is, even though it's arguably the first movie of the middle Disney Renaissance, is the iconic movie of the middle Disney Renaissance and possibly of the entire Disney Renaissance as a whole.
Yeah. This is the
I'd go along with that.
Charts that didn't get Oscar nominations. This one,
I think it did. Hold on, I'll double check.
I'm sure it got best soundtrack. There's a musical on Broadway for it.
Yeah.
Oh, it won a couple of Academy Awards for Can You Feel the Love to Elton John and Hans Zimmer's original score.
Yep.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, it won both, the Academy Award and Golden Globe for Best Original Score. It won the Golden Globe for Best Motion Picture.
Yeah, it's also
it also got a BAFTA.
It's got 90. Yeah, it's got 93% on Rotten Tomatoes, average score 8.4.
And even won a few Grammys.
The Chicago Sun-Times gave it 3.5 out of 4. The Washington Post called it an impressive, almost daunting achievement.
Yeah.
They called it this is just I'm going to read this and then the stream should just stop because it says everything.
Yeah.
Hal Hinson of the Washington Post said, "Shakespearean in tone, epic in score. It seems more appropriate for grown-ups than for kids. If truth be told, even for adults, it's downright strange."
Yeah.
Which what more is there to add to that?
It won original score. It was nominated twice for original song for Hakuna Matata and the Circle of Life. And then it won original song for Can You Feel the Love Tonight?
Yeah. Two Annies, BAFTA for the DVD, Golden Globes. I'm just looking at the list of awards it's got and been nominated for, and every last one of them is right.
Yeah.
Ranked as the 319th greatest film ever made by Empire magazine in 2008. One of the 25 all-time best animated films. Fourth best film in the animation genre by the American Film Institute top 10.
Yeah.
Hakuna Matata is 99 of their 100 Years, 100 Songs ranking. Selected for preservation by the National Film Registry of the United States by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. And that was in 2016.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that because, as I said, Lion King is definitely among the first animated movies to be actually animated with the big screen in mind.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This movie was made to be watched on a big screen.
Yeah.
If you watch it on a small screen, you're going to miss out.
Yeah. And
I just watched it on the phone.
Yeah.
You need to watch it on a big screen, Scummer, seriously.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I'll just say this live on stream now. This is the first time I'd ever watched this movie. It was just a short while ago in preparation for this. And my immediate thought was afterwards, and you guys will back me up, I said, why the hell did I wait so long to watch this movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, you did say that. And you.
Yeah.
I also have that question for you.
Yeah.
Now, before we get into the discussion at large, first, we are going to briefly acknowledge that there are certain aesthetic similarities between The Lion King and a certain Japanese anime known as Kimba the White Lion. If any of the other co-hosts has anything to say about that, speak now or forever hold your peace.
I do. And what I will say is there is a line between... What were the two words we said? Like... There's a line.
Homage is a line between homage and plagiarism, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is a line between homage and plagiarism. Given the size of Disney, given the amount of money Disney has made off this movie, and given the utter lack of any nod, crediting, or mention of the prior, for me, as good as this film is, it is over that line into plagiarism. It's not to say it's not a great film. It's brilliant. I think, without the internet, most Western audiences would never have known about that controversy.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it's not there, and it doesn't mean we shouldn't acknowledge it. And yes, amazing movie. We're going to say all of that in excruciating depth, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, not only amazing, but also influential.
Yes. But we have to acknowledge that if you are tracing the origin of any movie that is an homage or has nods to or is influenced by The Lion King, the book doesn't stop with The Lion King. You need to go further back.
Yeah.
We can still enjoy the movie. We can still discuss its influence on Western cinema, but we have to acknowledge it didn't start there. And like I've never heard of this Kimba the Lion thing. I literally Googled the damn thing, and even the front cover of it. Let me see if I can bring up the front cover and show you on this stream, because it's look. I've never seen Kimba the White Lion. I literally said to Ring, "What is this?" when they mentioned it. But
yeah, I haven't seen it either, but I have seen the stills and read about the controversy.
Yeah, like you don't need
just the name. Just the name alone, though, is it? It's like Kimba, Simba.
Yeah. And I'm just gonna share the screen for you if Ring can share this.
Yep.
This is the front cover. This is the Ultra Edition DVD art of Kimba the White Lion. Which I just let that sink in for a moment. You don't need to be a genius. You don't need to be a incredible legal mind to see that.
That's a little obvious.
I just kind of assumed they were ripping off Hamlet, I'll be honest.
Well, they are doing that too, but no, they're paying homage to Hamlet. This is a rip-off. That's the difference. So what they do to Hamlet is they're telling the story for children. It's an adaptation.
Yeah.
What they're doing to this is plagiarism. Just look at it. like,
So, yeah.
yeah.
So I will say on the name similarity thing, like Simba, if I remember right, Simba is literally just Swahili for lion. So,
So I have
so
heard
that's
that. I don't know if
probably
that's
more
true.
of a coincidence rather than.
Yes, it literally, if you Google the word Simba, it comes up as the lion in Swahili.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I'm
multiple
afraid I don't
ways.
know. Yeah, cool. I don't know much about Swahili, so.
Yeah. So
Again, African language, I can't argue with that.
Yeah.
So,
Who says you don't learn things on Media Musings?
yeah.
So I'm looking at a website here. Again, I can't speak for its accuracy, but it seems, nothing's ringing alarm bells. They're saying Mufasa means king in Manazoto language. Simba is lion in Swahili. And Rafiki means friend in Swahili. So they're saying Nala means gift or beloved in Swahili. Sarafina means bright star. Simba's mother's name, Sarabi, means mirage. Timon means respect or to honor in Greek. I feel like that's ironic.
Yeah.
As a biblical name, it means worthy. Pumba is Swahili for slow-witted or stupid. Before Scar had his wound on his eye, he was Taka, which means garbage or waste. And the hyenas, Shenzi means savage, Banzai means skulk, and Ed is Ed.
Is Ed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, those are the, again, I am going to drop the link where I've just read all of that so you can look at the website yourself. You can decide if you think it's something you want to listen to or not. And I will make sure Ringer's got the link to put in the description of this at the end. I'll share it in the private chat so you've got it now, Ring. You decide. It's a Safari website. They've got no reason to lie. People aren't going to go on Safari just because they think they know what something means in Swahili, but it's entirely up to you.
And so since Hamlet was brought up, I'll extend this question to the younger members of the panel. So basically everybody but Scummer.
Yeah.
Well,
that was cruel, Ring.
No, I mean, everyone who was young enough to grow up with the Lion King.
Okay.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
I feel like Chaos might be too young to have grown up with the Lion King.
The first Lion King that came out after I was born was Lion King 1.5. Or 1.5 or whatever it is.
What's on the menu?
Yeah. So basically, Disney does Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.
Yeah. I remember Pumba sitting on the remote and Price Drop TV starting, and that's a joke that is now dead because I don't think Price Drop TV exists anymore.
Yeah. But anyways, so for those of us who are young enough to have seen The Lion King in our formative years. Oh, and thank you, Mage Grey Wolf.
Yes, I did drop all those names into it as I was reading, but that website's just got them all listed. But again, Google Translate, not the most reliable thing on the planet, so take it, do your own research, basically. That's what I'm telling you. That's what I tell you every week. Do your own research.
Like, take it with about half of Lot's wife.
Yeah, it's not quite a Carthage of Sol, but it's definitely like Lot's wife's left leg.
Yeah. But when we say do your own research, though, we don't mean it in the same way that flat earthers mean it, though. So
we don't mean go on YouTube and listen to white people who think they know something about something but didn't finish high school.
Yeah,
that's not.
We mean we are complete lay people, and we're probably fucking up about this. So feel free to go prove us wrong.
Yes, and if you've got it and the sources, drop them in the comments so everyone else can prove us wrong too and laugh at us.
But anyways, for those of us who are young enough to have grown up with The Lion King, to have seen it before we you studied Hamlet in high school. Is it just an American thing, or did you go through Hamlet and I'm like, holy shit, this is just The Lion King?
I have a confession to make.
Yeah.
When I was in school, none of my sets actually did Hamlet, so I've never actually read it. I've seen adaptations, but I've never actually read it and studied it. Well, not that. My sets did Othello and Much Ado and other stuff. Because what happens in British schools, Hamlet's not. Okay, well, first of all, they're not going to teach us anything that makes us look bad against Scotland.
Yeah.
So, it's and Hamlet is not considered a high-level Shakespearean play. It's not considered that it requires massive amounts of analysis and understanding.
Yeah.
So if you were in the top sets, you didn't read Hamlet.
Yeah.
You read Othello, you read other,
Yeah.
And they're all set to a level. So it depends on what level you were in.
Yeah.
And
if you're at a low level, you get a Midsummer Night's Dream. And I'm speaking from experience here.
Yeah.
I got Midsummer Night's Dream in The Tempest. That's the ones I had.
I got Midsummer Night's Dream. I got Much Ado, Othello, because we did Iago's soliloquies for GCSE, and we actually did The Tempest at A level, but to a much higher level because we compared it to other contemporary stuff with Shakespeare. So we were comparing it to things like Marlowe and other stuff. So it was done in a different way. But again, it all depends on the teacher as well. There's a lot of wiggle room in the British curriculum for which Shakespeare play does the English teacher like.
My entire school did Macbeth.
Yeah. Well, I did. I personally did Macbeth and Romeo and Juliet, but my sister, who went in a couple of years, went into high school a couple of years after me, did do Hamlet, and I got that. Holy shit! This is The Lion King.
See, when we were doing Much Ado, set 2 were doing Macbeth and set 3 were doing Hamlet. I think set 4 were doing Midsummer Night's Dream.
Yeah.
Because they set us out in British school system. Unfortunately, I was in top sets for everything, so they decided that meant I couldn't possibly be dyslexic. Let's not go there.
Yeah. Conversation for another day, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
But yeah, largely, again, yes, it is. So we've talked about Kimber. We've talked about Hamlet. Are we going to talk about the SFX department? Are we going to get that out of the way?
Yep.
Apparently and they must be American. I don't know the full story. I'm assuming they're American because British parents would not have given a shit.
Yeah.
Apparently there's the bit where Simba flops down and the thing goes off to Rafiki. In the sky there, it either says sex or SFX. And apparently, what I presume are probably white, middle-class, suburban American mums got pissed off at this. Because apparently it was telling kids to have sex. Like we hadn't just watched that fight with Nala. That was very sexually charged.
Yeah. It's like, as if they hadn't already seen Nala give the camera fuck me eyes.
Yeah. And, I'm not surprised millennials are the generation where being a furry became more mainstream, because look at it. They had a first night and sex to a beautiful song.
So we're blaming The Lion King for furries.
Yeah, we've
Not only
definitely
the
blaming
Lion
the
King, but yes, the Lion King.
No, but the Lion King started it.
Yeah. No, like, yeah, it seems to me that there are two sets of furries. Those who had their awakening with the Lion King and those who had their awakening with Sonic.
I think there's a third smaller group. I think there's also the ones who had it with the animated Robin Hood.
Yeah,
They're the OG furries, yeah.
Yeah, Disney has a lot to answer for, basically.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I was gonna say there were Disney's Robin Hood. They seem to have a little theme with sort of cowardly lion villains.
Oodalally, go
Yeah.
over there.
Yeah.
Prince John reminds me a lot of Scar.
Yes, I do think
the other way
that's
around, yeah.
deliberate. Yeah, it is deliberate.
Yeah.
And the Cowardly Lion, obviously, we all know about the Wizard of Oz. And
Yeah.
have we done the Wizard of Oz on this channel before, or do we need to add it to the list?
The
ever-growing, never-diminishing list.
We've... Yeah.
Yeah.
We it's been on the list. I like at first I wanted to do it for one of the lit months, but it's not a good idea to do it for one of the lit months because September also happens to be Native American Heritage Month.
Yeah, not a good idea.
Ooh.
Yeah, you can see why that wouldn't be a good idea.
Yeah.
We got collared on that one year. Don't make our mistake.
We did acknowledge our little fuck up though, didn't we?
Yes, we did. Yeah, we acknowledged it the following week.
Yeah, that was to be fair, Ring. If Doodle and I can get away with doing asterisks in the Great Crossing during Native American History Month for Wizard of Oz is pretty fucking tame in comparison.
Yeah, but in our defense, we didn't know, and we did spend that entire stream slamming it.
Yeah.
We tore that thing to pieces and fed it its own entrails.
Yes.
Yeah. And
it was
so,
well, we had this. This wasn't planned, but it seemed to because myself and Noodle took turns at host. It seemed that all the controversial ones always landed when it was Noodle's turn to host. Yeah.
But anyways,
so now we've got all the controversy out the way. It didn't say sex; it said SFX, and I absolutely believe that because that's exactly what the nerds in an SFX department would do.
Yeah,
that is exactly what they would do. Like if we were all animators, that is exactly what we would do.
Oh,
yes,
like how in basically every Pixar movie, the room number of where most of the animators went to school for animation shows up somewhere in the movie.
And also, there is a Disney movie where Scar really is a rug.
Yeah, and that's coming up next week.
Yes, that's coming up next week. So we'll put a pin in that one.
Yeah,
we'll take it outside and beat it later.
Now,
so
this is probably the first major animated picture to have such a star-studded cast. Because we've got, Jonathan Taylor Thomas as young Simba. We've got Matthew Broderick as adult Simba. Jeremy Irons as Scar. James Earl Jones, happy birthday, by the way, a bit belated, as Mufasa. We have Rowan Atkinson as Zazu, and Nathan Lane as Timon, and those are just the ones I can name off the top of my head.
Yeah, we've got Whoopi Goldberg, Cheech Marin, and Jim Cummings as the hyenas.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So
yeah, I'm looking at this list of the cast, and again, I'm just like, this is a who's who of who was still going to be a household name, however many years later.
And Aladdin did it a little bit, by casting Robin Williams as the genie. Sorry, Robin Williams, spinning in your grave. Because, famously, he didn't want to be...
Typecast.
No. He didn't want to be advertised as being attached to the project because he feared it would take away from Fern Gully. Disney advertised him as, Disney put the genie on just about every bit of advertisement for Aladdin possible. And
oh dear.
And it pissed off Robin Williams because he had it in writing that they wouldn't do that. And that's why we had Homer Simpson for the direct-to-video sequels as the genie.
Yeah. So this film, that's all the controversy dealt with and all the backstory.
I was trying to say, and I realised. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was going to say, I realised I was muted. How long was it during this film before I suddenly realised that was Rowan Atkinson?
About halfway through.
About halfway through, and it suddenly dawned on me, that's Rowan Atkinson.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Do we want to talk about the entire score now, or do we want to pepper it in throughout the stream? Because the score... Look, last week I said that the best Disney soundtrack ever, including Encanto, is Hercules. Yeah. I still stand by that. But the best score, not sound, score, is this. Mm-hmm. Don't at me.
And what? Once again, I know I've done it way too much this month, but once again, I'm going to have to bring up the Prince of Egypt because no, seriously.
Why didn't we just watch the Prince of Egypt?
Because you didn't want to.
Yes, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me.
Yeah.
Blame Noodle.
Well, also that, and Kevin Conroy died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but, you can definitely see that Prince of Egypt took a lot of its cues from The Lion King.
Yes. Yes, you can. A lot of it's... But then you get things in The Lion King that are definite, there's...
Yeah.
Disney had a phase where every movie it made, and therefore every other animation house also did the same thing, where every scene got changed by leaves on the wind. Looking at you, Pocahontas.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah.
And it gives it that air of, magic, exoticism.
Yeah.
And we'll get onto the exoticism of Africa in due course. But you can see how it had such an influence, how it was so well done.
Yeah.
But if a movie tried to do it now, I'd just look at it and go, really? Yeah. Really? It's a very 90s, it had its time and then they moved on. And they didn't quite flog the horse after death, but they came very close.
Yeah. But, and so also, just so we get it out of the way, DreamWorks, you really fucked, I'll say it again, DreamWorks, you really fucked up with Road to El Dorado by letting Elton John just run roughshod over it. You had Elton John and Howard Shore together again, and you obviously wanted to make, homages. You obviously wanted to tie it back to The Lion King because you did so in the advertising and you did so visually during the Trail We Blaze sequence.
Yeah.
But you let Elton John run roughshod over the project, or at least that's what I can gather from having seen both movies. And it only hurt the score in result.
Look, I have my opinions about Elton John. Okay,
Yeah.
He's one of those people who I personally, and this is personal opinion, it's no slight on the man, I'm not quite sure why he's as famous as he is.
Yeah.
His voice is not. When I think of great musicians, I'm thinking of Meatloaf, Bonnie Tyler, people with powerful voices who could do a 4-hour concert live, and the audience were exhausted at the end and they weren't. I'm thinking like Freddie Mercury level.
Yeah.
For some reason, Elton John he's not quite at that level, but culturally, he's considered, he plays in that.
Yeah.
Pool. And I can't quite grasp why. Because he's good, but Elton John is like a bad Pixar movie compared to those people. Like, if it wasn't a Pixar movie, it'd be good.
Yeah.
But because it's a Pixar movie, it's 2 levels lower than it. Like,
yeah.
Why are you being compared to Freddie Mercury? Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. And that is a personal opinion. And Elton John is he's a housewife's favourite. So he has that going for him. And, I'll defend the man to the hill, when they talked about, he's been through some hell over his sexuality in the British media over the years. And he's taken a lot of flack and a lot of unfounded accusations and viciousness flying around. Didn't deserve that. But as a musician, would I actively choose to listen to him singing? The only playlist I have him on Spotify is my Fuck the Queen playlist because I've got Candle in the Wind on it. Yes. And that I think says everything.
Yeah.
His cover of Pinball Wizard was pretty good. I'll give him that. But I'm not a massive Elton John fan.
Yeah. And again, no shade to anyone who is, no shade to the man himself. I don't get it. Maybe he's not my style, but I don't get it.
I mean, in the case of The Lion King, it's, the songs are hung upon the very sturdy this very sturdy skeletal structure of the overall, score.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for me, Elton John is a much better songwriter than he is singer or performer. In much the way, what's his last name? It's gone straight out of my head. The guy who wrote for Meatloaf and Bonnie Tyler.
Steinman.
In much the way Jim Steinman, fantastic songwriter. Not someone I would probably pay a lot of money to see perform.
Yeah.
Like he's got his niche and his real skill is in writing, not performing.
Yeah.
And I feel like Steinman and Elton John, it's not an insult to either of them to use their names in the same sentence. When you're talking about that kind of thing.
But also in terms of the songs, for now that you've seen it, and I pointed it out while we were having our pre-show watch, do you get what I mean when I'm talking about strategic stylization?
Yes, and I feel like for this movie in particular, rather than us have that discussion about strategic stylization now, I think it's better that we have it as we talk through the film. Okay. Because if we try and say it all in one go, we're not going to be able to pinpoint moments where we're talking about it.
Yeah.
And I've got notes.
It'll accidentally become the length of the film.
Yeah.
Yes. So even more so, you know what we're like. So speaking of the film, we've got this opening, very cinematic shot, and we've got the circle of life.
Yeah. And it's basically, majestic landscape with animals after majestic landscape with animals.
Yes. And it is, I don't know about you, but the key it's played in, the way it's played, it does hit you in the feels straight away.
Yeah.
Like you don't even know what this film's about and you're ready to cry at it. No, just me. Okay then.
Yeah.
Oh no, I
it's-
definitely agree, especially if you get a decent speaker set for it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I very good speaker system here. Now
maybe I didn't,
this
because we were
opening-
watching it on StreamYard, so I didn't quite get the full
yeah, no,
for the sound
Definitely.
of it. You know,
I do strongly recommend get yourself a good set of headphones or a good set of speakers and listen to it on full blast.
Yeah.
Just listen to the soundtrack.
Mm.
You will understand. It will hit you in the feels. And then we get straight into this scene, which is this opening hits different now. I've seen what a royal transfer of power looks like. Okay,
I'm going to say Disney does it better.
Yeah, Disney does it better. It's very divine right of kings. There's a lot of messianic imagery there, and the sort of the use of Rafiki as this kind of priest slash voodoo man slash Disney doesn't quite know what he is, but he's exotic, which. Let's not talk about how making the black man a baboon, who's also an exotic African kind of voodoo priest thing, is a problem. Let's step away from that comment.
Yeah,
because
well, I mean,
Yeah.
The Lion King,
that sticks in my throat right now.
I mean, The Lion King is kind of smack dab in the middle of the magic exoticism phase of the Renaissance, because right before The Lion King we had Aladdin.
Yeah, and I mean it's 1994.
Yeah, and immediately after The Lion King we had Pocahontas.
Yeah. So yeah, that cold open it's the idea, it's colourful, it's bright, and then we're immediately hit with the dark recesses of a cave and a little grey mouse that wouldn't have been out of place on Cinderella.
Yeah.
Which is quite obviously geared to set you up to dislike Scar from the first moment, even in the colour palette.
Yeah.
So
I will.
He's played by
I-
Jeremy Irons.
I immediately said I didn't like him. I was like, I already hate this character, and
one last thing about the opening is how, even stylistically, like everything about the opening for The Lion King is just about the opposite of what Disney usually did up until that point for the opening of one of their animated features.
Yeah. So prior to this, they were usually quite subdued openings.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say. And they were very intimate openings.
Yes.
They were, single characters, maybe 2 or 3 characters at most.
Yeah, either you'd have a book opening and an opening narration.
Yeah. Or
you'd have a single character showing up as a narrator, like say in Robin Hood did both the book opening and the single character narrator. Yeah. But like in Aladdin, where you have the merchant, he does the selling bit and then he goes into the story.
Yeah, it's one character giving you an opening. It's very intimate. This is very different. This is quite obviously made for the cinema.
Yeah, it's very grand. It's very grand. Yeah. It's very sweeping, and it's all very show don't tell. Not a word of dialogue in the entire opening.
Yeah, which again is very different. It's animals. It's not humans, and it's designed that way.
Yeah.
There is I will get to it because we're talking about the presentation of a king, but there is a bit of class warfare going on immediately. So let's get that out the way. You never hear characters who are not the main characters actually speak. And there is this thing of, can the wildebeest speak? Yeah. Can the other animals actually speak? Or is that there's a class warfare thing going on there of speaking is for the royalty and the upper classes.
Yeah.
And obviously, anytime you've got a story about a king, he's a king and he has subjects.
Yeah.
And this film is very careful to, yes, buy into that, but then immediately, knowing it will have put off a lot of working class people from that, immediately going to know you have to respect them. Even if you eat them, you have to respect them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which,
But anyways, back to like, so, we have the presentation and then cut to the line, the title card, and then cold open on the mouse.
Yes. Squeak, squeaker, squeak, squeaker. Wait, no, that was a chipmunk. It's also the wrong animation house.
And also showing you that, and also the first, the first hints that they are lifting from Shakespeare here, where we have Jeremy Irons giving his soliloquy.
Yes.
Mm.
And then this film's very good. It introduces the characters very quickly in a way that's very accessible. They all have their own color palette. They all have their own voice. They all have their own character. And you get that within 5 or 6 seconds of them being on screen.
Yeah.
Like, you know exactly who and what Zazu is before he's in Scar's mouth.
Yeah.
Like, there's no need to argue that. He's the major domo. He's Humphrey if Humphrey was like working in a posh house and not for the civil service.
Yeah.
He's very full of himself.
Yeah.
And probably could run the Pride Land single-handed, but he's not quite brawny enough to pull it off.
Yeah.
And I do love the comedy in this movie.
Yeah.
Is very much for the adults. Let's have that discussion. The comedy in this movie is definitely for the adults. Everything in this movie is a pun, or is a joke of some description.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Heck, the morning report scene is literally pun after pun after pun after pun.
Yes. The elephants have forgotten, and the leopard's in a spot, and
I told the elephants to forget it, but they can't. Cheetahs never prosper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, morning report, very, and of course, kudos to Rowan Atkinson for that, because he's just Rowan Atkinson, isn't it?
Yeah.
Man's on form there. But this soliloquy with Scar, that becomes his conversation with Mufasa. Very interesting from a character point of view. A very, there's very much the brain versus brawn, but there's something I noted in this film, and I'll point it out again later when it changes. The way Scar is animated.
Yeah.
And the way he's voiced, and Jeremy Irons, kudos, because Scar is very, you can hear, like, if you close your eyes and listen to Scar speaking, you don't even have to listen to the words, but this is a coward, and this is a liar, and this is a cheat.
Yeah, like, this is a schemer.
This is a schemer.
You clock him straight away, don't you? It's just,
I think even
this
little kids would.
Yeah. He's a nasty piece of work. He's a very stereotypical villain in his voice and in his animation. He's even animated to be smaller, to move less, he's almost animated to move as if he's scared.
Yeah.
Constantly. Which is really interesting to look at from that point of view of, how do you make lions have human characteristics?
Yeah.
How do you give them facial expressions and feelings and conversation?
Yeah.
And it was very well done in that regard. The whole brain versus brawn thing, I do love that thing of, you know, in the brains, I got the lion's share of the brains, but in the
Yeah.
brutes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but it one comes down to brute strength. I'm at the
Yeah.
shallow end of
Shallow
the
end.
gene pool.
Yes. And we did say, and I think it is bears being said on stream, we all said sort of after watching this film, there's probably only 2 actors ever to have lived who could have played Scar: Jeremy Irons and Alan Rickman.
Yeah.
And
I do think they got the right one there. I mean, and I think Rickman's the only one who could have ever personally could have pulled it off, but I think Irons was perfectly cast.
Yes, very much. I think Alan Rickman is.
If you're doing a real,
one.
I haven't seen that because I'm not interested in seeing a live action shot for shot remake.
Yeah, it's like I'm not a masochist, so I avoided that one because I saw the reviews.
Now that being said, if Disney was going to do a live action remake of The Lion King, I think it would have been better if they had kept with their, Shakespeare with lions vibe and did Macbeth as a Scar movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That would have been
I think that would have worked.
I will point out, though, there is a much better live-action version of The Lion King than they released.
Yeah.
Musical.
It's called The Lion King Stage Show.
Yeah.
It's the musical. Go see that. They should have literally just filmed the musical and released it like Cats.
Yeah,
better.
No, but here's the thing, right? Only a couple years before they made their live action Lion King, they re-released. They did a theatrical anniversary release for the Lion King, and it raked in a ton of money. So I'm like, if a theatrical re-release of the Lion King can still pull that kind of numbers at the box office, you don't need to make a live action Lion King. You can just re-release it every remaster and re-release it every few decades.
If Disney should learn something from their own history here, is that you can re-release them with maybe a little bit of remastering. You can re-release your entire back catalogue numerous times and get away with it.
Oh yeah, we had that phase in the late 90s, didn't they? Where everything was just re-released, remastered for DVD, remastered.
Get it before it goes back in the Disney vault.
And the VHS, because I caught a lot of them from the VHS era. Like all of a sudden, things like I saw Pinocchio at the cinema. I think the very first film I ever saw at the cinema was The Jungle Book. All the Snow White, all that, they were all being re-released at the time, theatrically.
I will say something. If you were a kid watching these on VHS, if you never got the chance to see them in cinema or never got them on DVD, it is worth re-watching them on DVD or on a streaming service, because the quality of image from VHS to DVD, I was quite lucky. Yeah. I was that kid who had a lot of the VHSs, and my parents moved into DVD when I was still young enough to want Disney movies. So I saw a lot of them on VCD, Pirate Rip, wherever my parents got them from. They got them from the high seas. Open source.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the jump in quality, it's genuine. It's like the jump in quality from black and white to color TV is VHS to DVD when it's done right. And even the jump from DVD to Blu-ray is not as big as the jump from VHS to DVD.
Yeah.
So well worth comparing them. If your memories of Disney are only VHS, rewatch the DVDs. You will not regret it.
And like I pointed out, there were a couple things that were done subtle things that were done visually that had a nice narrative effect that I don't ever remember noticing before, but I had only ever seen The Lion King on VHS. Maybe, well, I do remember seeing it in theaters, but I was too young to remember seeing, to be able to form memories when it was in theaters.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, just it is well worth watching it on the highest quality image renderer system you've got.
And the biggest screen you've got.
The biggest screen you've got. Be like those kids from the movies about the 80s who sit in front of the TV like this. This, whose parents are yelling at them in the background that they're going to get square eyes. Be those kids.
Yeah.
You'll love it. But yeah. And just to go back for a moment of the joke of before sunrise, he's your son.
Yeah.
Yes, because Mufasa is only king of everything the light touches.
Yeah.
But yeah, this and I will say for a movie released in the 90s, because we're sort of moving towards it, the method of parenting in this movie is very progressive.
Yeah.
Like, we grew up in the 90s. I don't know about you, but if I'd have run off to an elephant graveyard and almost got myself killed, the worst I would have expected from my father was not an "I'm disappointed in you."
Yeah.
I think it would.
Yeah.
I think a clout around the ear would have been I would have considered lucky.
A clout around the ear wouldn't have been, it'd have been at the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. I consider, like I said, I would have considered myself lucky to get a clip around the ear for that.
Yeah, I'd be. I'm going to leave it there. But a very lucky child, very good parenting there. Especially because, and it's almost disingenuous to how scared Simba is of Mufasa's reaction.
Yeah.
Because Simba is very guilty, very ashamed, very frightened of what his father's going to do. And then you see that conversation and you're just like...
And especially with the way Mufasa says, "I need to teach my son a lesson," you always think, "Oh,
yes,
what's he going to do?" You're like, "What what is he going to do to Simba here?"
Yeah, it's like you're fully expecting a proper leathering, basically.
Yeah,
and even Zazu, like, Simba, good luck. Like, fucking hell, someone call an ambulance. I understand.
Well, I think this is almost that thing of like that. I've seen it used in a bit of tropes in films, but like with a good king, nobody wants to suffer the king's displeasure, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That sort of fear enough kind. It's sort of a trope I've seen before.
Yeah, and it is very much. It's that thing of they don't want to. He doesn't want to disappoint his father. That's what he's scared of. It's not that he's scared of anything else, but it does come across as if he's half expecting a leathering.
Yeah.
And it is one of those things, I will say, and it makes me sad. You're an adult when you agree with Zazu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I experienced that last time I watched it, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't watched it since I was a teenager, but yeah.
Well, so since we are getting into the first scene where I pointed it out.
Yes, the elephant graveyard. That's literally the next point on my list. It's like, I'm not even joking. It's my next point on my list. See if you can see it.
Yeah. Well, I was more referencing, just can't wait to be king.
Yeah, but again, I wrote it down by that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, just can't wait to be king. The strategic stylization of you're already got suspension of disbelief because it's animated.
Yeah.
But now even within that, it becomes there's something more than just animated. It's otherworldly in the way it's done.
The colors become more vibrant and it's very the animation becomes very surreal almost. It Just Can't Wait to Be King is probably what I'd say is the most overt example of strategic stylization in The Lion King.
Yeah, definitely. I genuinely feel like Be Prepared is slightly more stylized and is definitely playing up to it more. But I do see your point with it's done in a different way when it's
Yeah. I feel like with Be Prepared, it's stylized in a very almost propagandist way.
Yeah.
Yes, and we're going to get to that because I have a lot of opinions about that particular montage and that design. But yeah, the strategic stylization of Just Can't Wait to Be King, and then the immediate undercutting of the message of that song, which is this kid's a child, this kid doesn't understand responsibility, immediately undercut by by the end of that song, you are primed to view Simba as a spoiled little brat who doesn't know anything about the world.
Yeah.
Like, as an adult, that's how you're primed to view him. As a kid, you're singing along and you think it's awesome. But as an adult, you're looking and you think this little brat's going to be king. Particularly if you're not very royalist.
And how...
But then you see immediately they come back for Zazu. He tries to turn and fight. He tries to protect Nala. You see the seeds of a great king there.
Right.
Yeah.
To be fair, now I've watched this movie, I can actually picture Charles singing that in his head for the last God knows how many years.
Yeah, it's a shame Charles didn't run off, isn't it? Blaming himself. Let's not go there. But yes, let's get back to the movie, and once again, Mufasa and his impeccable timing.
Yeah.
And then this conversation about bravery and don't go looking for trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah. I finally see
more of that healthy parenting.
And I finally get the meme, and I'm pretty damn sure I've shared it myself now a few times over the past. The CWU's been doing. That's the other cells in the picket line. You must never go over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's
everything? Everything the light touches is the Roman Empire. What's that shadowy place? That's where the Picts are. You must never go there.
Yeah.
But again, I want to talk about the hyenas because the hyenas are a lot funnier than I remember.
Yeah.
First of all, kudos to Whoopi.
Yeah.
But also the hyenas are kinky as fuck. Did you notice?
Oh yeah.
Just a wee bit.
That name sends a shiver down my spine. Mufasa. Ooh, say it again.
Yeah.
And again, the queer coding of villains and that happens. That's a thing that happens. But yeah, that's what that is. But it did make me laugh, so I'm willing to forgive it. What I'm not willing to forgive, or should I say, what gave me the ick? Is that what the kids are saying now? It gave me the ick.
Amongst other things, I guess.
Yes, is the Be Prepared and Chaos's comment, which is entirely right, of it's quite propagandist.
Yeah.
I said something before the stream. I'm going to say it again while we're live because I think it bears repeating. The average age of a kid watching this film when it came out was conservatively not old enough to have learned about the Second World War yet.
Yeah. I was 3 when it came out in theaters.
I was still a baby when it came out in theaters. I think I saw it when I was about 3 or 4.
Yeah.
That imagery of the hyenas of Scar up on the top, you've seen that imagery before. You have seen it before. If you've ever sat through a history lesson on World War II, you've seen that imagery before. Goose stepping, like there's elements of military parades and things going on there.
Yeah.
So as children, and this is why I think they do need to re-release this film every generation, because we need to train children from a young age to see imagery like that and think it's fuckery and to not like it and to be frightened of it, because otherwise we end up with President Trump, and Prime Minister Johnson.
And another thing about, like I said, like we said before, Be Prepared is another good example of what I mean of strategic stylization. It is a bit not in your face.
Yes, but with the fires and with his eyes being green and the different, it's very cleverly done, but it is strategic stylization. But I will say that the reason I was talking about it looking like that, there's a cycle that it's perpetuating images like that. We see it all the time in kids' shows. I'm sure you've seen it. The evil empire, the evil characters have all the aesthetics of fascism. They have the goose stepping, the dark grey uniforms, the leader who talks from on high. They have these very traditional, what we imagine fascism is.
I mean, the Imperial Army in Star Wars is literally
I was literally. I literally, my mind went there.
Yeah. So we have this. So kids, before they ever learn about fascism in any real way, are already primed to view those aesthetics as evil.
Yeah.
And then they learn about it, and they are reinforced in those aesthetics are evil. There's a problem there, though, and it's a major problem in that, unfortunately, what it's done, because that has become such a trope, it's taught people that if this bad group don't have that exact aesthetic, they're not fascists. They're not evil.
Yeah.
And there's been such a hyper focus on the aesthetic of fascism that there was no real exploration of the causes, how to combat, etc. of fascism. And we are seeing that play out over recently. And I'm not going to sit here and blame Disney for that. I am not going to sit here and blame any filmmaker for that. I am not going to say that it's their fault. What I am going to say is that is a tiny contribution to a much broader problem that we are now seeing the consequences of.
Well, I mean, Nazis have been, have been cinematic shorthand for the bad guys since World War II.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that means we can't view anyone who's not. There's a reason that the immediate leftist accusation against anyone whose politics we don't agree with is you're a Nazi. It's because that's what we've been taught. There's us and there's Nazis, and the Nazis are the bad guys. Instead of being taught the nuance and how to actually argue against them, we're all waiting for the one true king or the chosen one to come and bring it down and end it, rather than standing up and doing it ourselves.
I was about to mention that.
Yeah, that's a problem. I'm not saying Disney caused it. I'm not even saying Disney is in the top 500 of reasons this has happened. But it is
Disney didn't.
Something worth acknowledging.
Disney didn't start it. They just bought it for $4.6 million, whatever billions.
Yeah,
Star Wars.
Disney didn't start it. They just animated it.
Yeah.
They acquired it.
There is, it can be said that there is a bit of a problem with how Divine Right of Kings, The Lion King is.
Yes, very much so, and that's my next point.
Yes,
this
I
idea
think,
of. Go on, Chaos.
I was just going to say that I think that one of the things that has bugged me for a while about The Lion King is the emphasis on change exclusively with the ruler, as if literally nothing else mattered, when it is in fact not that. That's not how that works.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree with that. And again, this movie hits different now I've seen what royal transfer of power looks like in real life.
Yeah.
You know, the idea that it's all done in the shadows and it's dark and there's no big, well, there will be a big ceremony, but it's not straight away. Other things go on. There's a lot of politicking. None of that appears in this movie.
Yeah.
And it is one of those things with this movie where you kind of look at it and you think, for better or for worse, this movie came out 1994, so back end, well, ish back end of the Troubles in Ireland, which wouldn't necessarily have had an impact on this. But the 90s, for the most part, a more innocent time.
Yeah.
Not just because we were children and therefore that's how we remember it, but we're talking pre-war on terror, pre-9/11. We're talking pre-Iraq, pre-Afghanistan. Queen Elizabeth is alive and is going to be alive for as long as we all know, because I don't know, she's got a really good beautician. We don't know what she's eating, but you know, there must, like, the secret to eternal life is swan meat twice a year.
Yeah.
You know, like there are certain assumptions that we hold.
Yeah.
That are just, the Queen's always going to be on the throne. There's always going to be, like, this film is pre-Diana's death.
Yeah.
And it's just a more innocent time. And that's not me looking back with rose-tinted glasses. That is objectively, it's a more innocent time.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because frankly, I don't remember this time to know whether that I'm looking back on it with rose-tinted glasses.
You know, in America, the biggest scandal was the president lying about getting a blowjob.
Yeah. Well, Nixon, but yeah.
No, I mean at the time.
Yeah, but Watergate after the fact.
Well,
at the time, yes, but Watergate had happened previously.
Yeah. What I mean is, you know, but Watergate was of its time, and you know, of the attitude of the 70s and 80s. We're talking about how the 90s was a more innocent, you know, a kind of a calm between the storms.
Very much, yeah. I mean, think about it. In the 90s, you had a president who resigned because he got a blowjob.
Yeah.
In the 2010s, you elected a guy who admitted to grabbing women by the pussy.
Yeah. You know,
different times.
Yeah, in 2020,
and went on to
in 2021 he incited a riot to commit treason.
Yeah. You know, I don't even think Desert Storm had happened in 94, had it?
No, it had it. I was born
yes, it had
around Desert Storm.
Desert Storm was 91.
Yeah, Desert Storm
91,
was 91.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so you'd had Desert Storm, so even then, American culture, you've got Vietnam syndrome, but your most recent war, you won it. Again, everything there was but there was that sense of buoyancy in the American culture.
There was definitely a sense of exercising the demon of Vietnam at that time.
Yeah.
Very much so. But you didn't get the job right because then you went and wandered off into Iraq.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah. The reason I'm talking about all this and Divine Right of Kings and politics and everything else, this movie is very idealistic. I mean, even for a kid's movie, it's idealistic. It's us versus them. It's light versus dark. It's good versus evil. It's, you know, everyone has their place. You know,
Yeah.
I am working class, and I look up at him. He is middle class. It's you know, it's of its time.
Yeah.
And it is, I think, from that perspective, an interesting historical document. But it is very much does encapsulate. Like, you couldn't make that movie unless, I'm not counting remakes. You couldn't, you couldn't go to a cinema animation studio now and say, I want to make a movie with a king and a child who should be king but isn't a king, and has to be told that he was born to it. Like, that movie would flop now.
Yeah.
Like, just because the culture's so different.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys would agree with this, because I'm looking at Lion King from not having context to the other side of the millennium. It feels to me a lot of the time like The Lion King has a lot of the aesthetics of a film about animals, but has a lot of the tropes of high fantasy.
Yes.
Yeah, that's because the Lion King franchise as a whole is literally just Shakespeare with lions.
Yeah.
Because the Lion King, Lion King is Hamlet with lions. Lion King 2 is Romeo and Juliet with lions. And then Lion King 1.5 is Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead with lions.
Well, no, the Lion King 1.5 is it's more let's parody ourselves before other people do it.
Yeah, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. It's literally, a parody of it's a Shakespearean parody of Shakespeare.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah. And obviously the reason I'm starting to talk on these topics now is because I'm avoiding the next beat of the plot.
Yeah. You're avoiding the next very obviously animated for cinema scene.
Yes.
And the trauma.
Yes. We are old enough to remember, Ring, you and I, old enough to remember and have been probably taking part in it, unlike Scummer, who hasn't seen this movie before today, and Chaos, who probably wasn't born, to have been part of that generation, early dial-up internet generation, who were swapping jokes on the internet about how this movie traumatized us.
Yeah.
Or
like I said before,
and the internet screamed.
I'm gonna say I heard a lot of the jokes and memes or whatever, even though I'd never watched this movie, so I had a kind of rough idea of what this movie was about going in. I will say that.
Yeah.
Like I said before this, before the stream, there were two big traumatic deaths, cinema deaths in my childhood. There was the death of Mufasa, and then there was the shoe in Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah.
See, whereas for me it was Bambi's mum, Mufasa. Those were probably the two big ones.
Though, I mean,
probably same for me, Noodle.
I mean, to be fair, the shoes mostly because it's like on screen and kind of graphic for a kids movie.
Yeah.
I always I did like there was a little meme going around a couple of years ago, like if Christopher Nolan directed Bambi, it's like, this man killed my parents. I cannot let that stand.
Yeah. But it is very much, it's like Mufasa's death for our generation. I think it wouldn't be overstating it to say that the generation who watched Dobby die are grateful it was Dobby and not Mufasa. Like, we had it worse. But it was the Dobby died of our generation. Yeah. It was very much like, you didn't know someone, but you can guarantee if you got talking about Disney, you would both sit there, oh, Mufasa, and then you just go silent because you didn't have to say anything else.
Yeah.
And it is, it is a frightening scene. Even as an adult, it's quite frightening.
Yeah.
But I sat there and I sort of dissected this morning.
Mm.
Yeah.
And
I'll say I would. I mean, obviously, look, it's my first time. I wasn't exactly traumatized, but at the same time, I was like, "Oh, I cannot wait for Scar to get it now." I really was like,
Yeah.
I hate him so much
Well,
at this
yeah.
point.
Yeah, you look.
well, imagine being 4 years old, Scummer.
Yeah,
I can
you look
imagine being 4 years
traumatized
old. But,
because you're an adult watching it. Like
Yeah,
we
but I
watched
was-
this as kids.
but I definitely had that. I definitely had that reaction of, "Oh, I cannot wait for Scar to get his comeuppance now. I really can't
this
wait."
bastard's going down.
Yeah.
And but I will point out this scene, when you look at it, it's the score that makes this scene scary.
Yeah.
It's the score that makes and breaks this scene.
Yeah.
Like, you get the backing score, and I've literally written here, score here sounds like distant screaming. And it does if you listen to it. And that's on the back of Simba screaming for help at the end of it.
Yeah.
But even the build up in the score, it's very, like, if you watch this scene without sound, you probably wouldn't be as affected by it.
Yeah.
And that explains why it got those awards that it got.
Yeah.
But for me, as a kid, what was scary was, oh God, his dad's dead. Oh God, oh God, oh God. As an adult, what's heartbreaking is that Simba doesn't understand.
Yeah.
And that it's screaming for help, trying to wake up.
Yeah.
And Simba's lack, that's what's heartbreaking.
And
I mean, because I mean that whole when he's having that talk with his dad as well, and the whole like, hey, we're going to be like, we're going to be like pals forever sort of thing, Dad.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, in a way, like
it's foreshadowing.
It's like it is almost in a way. It's like, okay, Mufasa, he doesn't necessarily want to explain death to Simba, but he's sort of
yeah. Okay.
He's trying to
Okay, I since we're talking about the earlier discussion with Simba and Mufasa, I have to point this out. So, when Mufasa says one day that the sun will set on my time and the sun will rise on yours.
Yes.
And there's a very interesting thematic thing going on when Simba's being chased by the hyenas.
Yeah.
It's happening at sunset.
Yeah. And then you see when he comes back at the end of the movie, there's a sunrise.
Yeah.
As everything comes to life.
Well, and also, when he's running back to return, there are a couple of shooting stars in the sky that are going in the direction that Simba's going.
Yeah.
And I didn't notice that before. I saw
you put that in the chat, or it was the touch of there,
Yeah, but there's something I do want to point out. Scar's voice. Now, how I talked about how Jeremy Irons played Scar very cowardly, the way he speaks. Scar's voice changes in this scene when he's telling Simba that Mufasa's dead. And the first time we hear Scar's voice harden is when he says, "Long live the king."
Yeah.
His voice goes from being, what's the PC modern non-homophobic way of saying this? His voice goes from being a little bit fruity to being very, I'm going to kill you now.
Yeah.
His voice, earlier in the film, his voice is quite fruity and he's he's not softly spoken, but he's
slightly camp.
Yeah.
Possibly, yeah.
Slightly camp. But here, the voice hardens and it stays hard right until Simba returns, and you get that return to that softer, kind of off-tone, again, camp voice. And it's really clever voice acting because it's so subtle, you'd blink and you miss it.
Yeah.
but it is there, and it's
there is
Scar's voice does very much reflect his position within the narrative.
Yeah, there is very much a sharper edge to the "I have power" Scar rather than the I'm scheming for power Scar.
Yeah, there's more of an edge to him. He's much harder in the way he's spoken, and it's just an interesting aside, because look, he's not the only camp character in this movie, and we're about to meet two more.
Yeah.
Who we love and adore, and I will not hear a bad word said against them, so don't.
You will not hear a bad word about either of those two from me. Okay, guarantee you.
But yeah, and it is the campness. I don't like calling it campness because that's exactly what it is. It's Disney queer coding its villains. But I don't like calling it that because that then buys into what Disney is subtly saying, which is that queer people are evil, queer people are cowards, queer people are this, that, and the other. That's what it's telling you without telling you. And I don't think it was deliberate, and I don't think it was malicious, but within the culture of 1994, that's exactly what people thought queer people sounded like and behaved like.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'd say even into like the early 2000s, like a queer character was kind of like, it was like the effeminate stereotype male gay was still a thing.
Yeah,
even way past this movie being released as well.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. So when I say he sounds queer, he sounds camp, that's not me saying anything against LGBT people. I'm one myself, but it's me pointing out that in 1994, that was most definitely the attitude and would remain that for a long time.
Yeah.
And again, much like I don't blame Disney for teaching us all that this is what fascism looks like and nothing else. Again, Disney didn't teach us all that that's what queer people talk like or queer men talk like.
Yeah.
But it didn't help by leaning into that stereotype.
And
I think
like
that's a fair
there is definitely a discussion to be had about queer coding throughout the Disney Renaissance.
Yes. Do we want to have that now, or do we want to put a pin in it for later?
I feel that it could like very much be its own stream, from like Ursula for Scar to
Hades.
Yeah.
It might
be a
probably a better discussion to have next week about Hades than here. But yeah. And then we meet our two best friends, the makers of the franchise, by far the best comedic duo in Disney history. Timon and Pumbaa, Hakuna Matata. And I will say that song, 3 bars, and I was sat here bopping along. I think I actually put it in the private chat of bops along.
I gotta admit, I was kind of like, this is catchy. I think it's first time I heard that, and I was like, this is a really catchy little tune.
And it comes in the perfect place in the movie because the audience has had some time to sit and digest Mufasa's death and the rise.
We've run with Simba. We've taken that distance, but now we need something to lift us because we are down in the dumps and we're just like this is the low point of the movie, and the song just lifts it.
Yeah,
it's a very good track at a very apt time.
Yes, it is. It is the needed comedic relief to lift the mood of the narrative.
And again, a little bit nihilistic, a little bit. Again, look at it as an adult, and you think I know you meant well, but that's not the right advice to give a child who's just lost his, like, I know
Yeah.
you mean well, but, you know, and it's a better than other people would have done to the poor kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be fair, they didn't quite know what Simba's past either, did they? So it was, you know, even though you should, you know, you'd think they'd be able to work it out. Oh, there's this like this cub here, and doesn't seem to have a family. You know, they might have worked something out, but
but I mean,
yes, but it's Timon and Pumbaa.
I mean, it is also, you know, setting up for, you know, the bigger lesson Simba learns that, you know, when bad things happen in the past, you can either run from it or you can learn from it.
Bop.
Yeah.
Ow. But yeah,
which, you know, which is not a bad life lesson, to be honest. You know,
yeah,
it's not, and the idea that you can't run from the past and you should, you know, pick it up is, you know, it's a good lesson to teach kids. Do I like that it's all bound up in divine right of kings and messianic imagery and all? No, but it's a Disney movie. You take what you can get.
Yeah.
And I just, unfortunately, as an adult looking at this movie, and I'm going to make this comment now, unfortunately, I've realised that of all the characters in this movie, in a situation like this, unfortunately, I would be Zazu. Like, I would be the mouthy little political voice in the background who got locked up. Like, that would be who I was. And then started making snarky comments to the king. Like, and risking my neck every time I... Like, that's Zazu had more of an impact on me than I realised.
Also,
it's always this would never have happened under Mufasa. Who? Nothing, you know.
Also, this is one of the earliest examples of Disney taking jabs at Disney.
Yes.
You know, because it's like, do something with a little more bounce to it. It's a small anything but that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, absolutely, yeah. I'd like to think that because Zazu sang just that one line of that Scar died with that song stuck in his head.
I hope so.
And
it would be appropriate.
It would.
But yeah. And then, but even before we get to there, we've got the stargazing scene with Timon and Pumbaa.
Yeah.
And again, the class warfare that permeates this film. You've got Pumbaa, who gives the scientific answer and is laughed at because he's the comedic relief.
Yeah.
You've got Timon, who comes up with some nonsense.
Yeah.
And then you've got Simba, who, this film so far has played all the religious and messianic imagery quite straight.
Yeah.
And then Simba says that, and Timon and Pumbaa burst out laughing.
Yeah.
And there is very much this... That's a class thing. Like what Dipstick told you that. It's very... You know, Simba's been taught certain ideals that just don't translate outside of a certain social class.
Well, and also, you know, you get that, you know, despite taking up this, you know, philosophy of Hakuna Matata, he hasn't really let go of his father's death.
He hasn't. But there's this thing of, when you're of a certain social class, and again, I'm in Britain, I know this. I know people who are Church of England. And there are two kinds of Church of England people. There are people who treat it like a coffee morning, which, honestly, I think that's how religion, if you're going to do it, should be.
Yeah.
Like, it's a coffee morning, it's a community thing, we get together.
We had that...
You know.
We had this joke or this discussion on another stream about like coffee, you know, like coffee morning Catholics or something, and I said that's the Church of England. You know?
Yeah, basically coffee morning Catholics. Or you get the hyacinth bouquets who
that they believe, but then Yeah, the
You
definite
do get-
as was it George Carlin said in that routine, we're having a special building where we all gather to compare clothing.
yes, basically.
Yeah.
And then you get your true believers.
Yeah.
And for some weird reason, it does seem to be the upper classes who are as close to true believers as we get.
Yeah.
Like they believe so much it's cringe. The rest of us
Yeah.
cringe when we see how much they believe. And that's kind of what's going on in this scene of Simba believes because he's being raised into it.
Mm.
And these two commoners who don't know who he is are just like, it's cringe. It is cringe to hear him come out with it. And it is that sense of, what kind of history have you got? What kind of past have you got? What kind of like life of Riley sheltered past have you got that you both believe this, but B, have clearly never interrogated it?
Yeah.
Like, the kings are up there. You just told two commoners that the kings are amongst the stars. What about everyone else? And it is that's where the problem is in that conversation. It's not that it's ridiculous. It's the kings. That's Timon's problem with it.
Mm.
And you can sort of Timon is very like Timon makes me laugh because he is very much the loudmouth working class lad of the movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Which makes it, which makes what he does later on even funnier.
Yeah,
creates that really great...
you're an outcast. So are we.
Yeah, he's very and then you've got to I've got a thing here. I've got to love Timon. Just gotta love Timon. Running from the past, learn from it. We've talked about, and then Simba's. Are we calling it a fight or are we calling it PG rated sex with Nala?
It can be both.
Both.
Both. This is hey, look, let's put it this way. I understand like mixed wrestling can be a fetish for some people, okay? This is about as much of it you can get into a kids film with it not being completely cringe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she pinned him and she's on top and then the romantic song in the background and it's like it's like the thought of my head literally popped out of that's the night Kiara was conceived.
Yeah.
You cannot that's that's the moment the Lion King 2 was born.
And like I said, Nala giving the camera fuck me eyes.
Yeah. It's like, I'll hold my hands up, and I'm probably not the only one on stream, but you don't have to. Hands up if you had a crush on Nala. Because, wow. I don't know if I had a crush on her or idealized her or both.
If I if I say yes, bearing in mind that I just watched this for the first time, it's going to sound really fucking weird.
No, but it is valid. It is valid. Like yeah. Go on.
I am too ace for that shit, but I definitely understand.
Yes.
I could sort of maybe put myself in the mind of a young kid and think, okay, I can kind of somewhat see that. Yeah.
Because, like, as a kid, there were going to be two reactions to Nala. You were either going to fancy her or you were going to want to be her. Being a bisexual child, although obviously not realizing that at the time, I was both. Little from column A, little from column B. Both. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. I didn't actually grow up into a furry, but like from a literally, I didn't grow up into a furry.
Well, we like I said, we've like I said, we've already blamed this movie for at least the second generation of furries.
Yeah,
so
we've already had the furry discussion.
Yeah,
absolutely. I fully understand, appreciate, and respect anyone who became a furry from watching this movie. I didn't, but I get it.
Mm.
I definitely get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we've got by far the best Disney gag of the 90s.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think there's one in Hercules that might top it.
Well,
But-
the best Disney drag gag.
Yes, by far. Yeah.
Yeah, because we.
Okay.
Okay, hold on.
Okay.
Hold on. Comment.
Yes, exactly that. Exactly that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
and
you know,
I will say,
like how we said on last week's stream with the Beauty and the Beast drag gag, where it's inflicted on as punishment in a very comedic slapstick, punch up.
Yeah.
We have this, Timon's drag gag, which is 1, better written, 2, better executed, 3, this is it.
Yeah, this is a great drag gag. It's not perfect. There are issues with it. But it is a great drag gag. You've got Timon saying, "What do you want me to do? Dress in drag and do the hula?"
And then immediately cut to him.
Dressed in drag doing the hula. And can I just point out, the generation that showed us this movie, that wrote that gag into this movie, are the same generation that are now bitching because drag queens are reading children's stories to kids. You caused this. This is you. Take your damn medicine.
Yeah.
I think something else that. Sorry, Noodle, go on.
Yeah.
But I just like it. You cannot show a generation their favorite character in drag, and that's fine, and that's funny, and that's fun, and then bitch when we put drag queens in front of kids to read them bedtime stories. You can't. I'm not allowing it. It's not allowed. If you are a person who doesn't like the idea of drag queens reading children's stories to children, and you ever mentioned or showed a child The Lion King, you have revoked your right to have a problem with that.
Yeah, you've kind of yes, they've recused themselves from the conversation at this point.
Well, and as I mentioned before, like the extreme, the even crazier than my upbringing fundies who had a problem with The Lion King, it wasn't that scene. It was, Rafiki and Mufasa in the sky.
Also, can I point out, Simba had 2 dads and he turned out great.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think that
again,
like something interesting to me about the drag scene we were just mentioning as well is that just before it you have interactions between Timon and Pumbaa with Nala. And I think that while we have interactions with Simba that are interesting in terms of potential class commentary, I think that has a bit of that in it as well.
Yeah.
Of just like how Timon and Pumbaa treat Nala.
Yeah.
Yes. There is this. It doesn't quite work, does it?
Carnivores, oi.
Oi, yeah, carnivores. You could absolutely just replace that word with politicians. Oi.
Yeah.
Which is really funny because in Lion King 1.5, just detracting from it, because I actually like that movie. It's quite funny. Do watch it if you ever want to giggle.
Yeah.
When Timon leaves his little meerkat colony, his mother is voiced and has the most stereotypical Jewish mother voice since Howard Wolowitz's mother in The Big Bang Theory. Like, I'm pretty sure it's the same voice actress. Like,
I wouldn't be surprised, actually.
I can't do it. I can't do it and do it justice. But yeah,
there is one middle-aged Jewish woman voice, and it's that.
Howard, it's your mother.
Yeah, and it is very much. There's a line where it's like, "Tamar, yes, don't forget to wash behind the ears." And it's just watch the movie. You should watch that movie. Like, I know it was a straight to DVD like flop, but watch it. It's fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
When it pauses about 2 minutes in, it hasn't paused. You haven't sat on the remote. Pumba has.
Yes.
It's very much yeah.
Yeah.
But it's you get this, and we do get hit. Like we have been taken through the ringer emotionally by this point in the film. We've seen Mufasa died, Hakuna Matata.
We felt the love tonight.
Nala.
Yeah,
you definitely felt the love tonight. And then we've seen the sort of the race across the savannah.
Yeah.
We've seen it's a real fixer-upper of a place.
Yeah.
And then we've got the comedic hit from Timon. And then we have what I think it's a split-second shot. But for me, this shot is the Volta of the film. This is the moment the film goes from being fun kids movie to, oh shit, shit's about to get real.
Yeah.
And it's the moment of Scar yelling at Simba's mother.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then you get the flash to Simba, the lightning flash and the roar. And you can almost like, it's just, how dare you lay hands on my mother?
And,
how dare you?
And that
moment Scar wrote his own obituary.
Yeah. And
that's the moment that man died.
And so and you asked about it in the chat, but that lightning, in the private chat while we were watching, that lightning strike is the lightning strike that starts the fire.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, very thematically appropriate in that regard.
Yeah. And and as Simba's approaching, clouds are rolling in, and very much
he's the oncoming storm.
Yeah, it's like very much the pathetic fallacy at displayed in all its glory.
Yeah. But it is very much a moment of demons run when a good man goes to war. Like, I'm making the Doctor Who references because that's the last time I saw that level of gravitas in in TV. So yeah, and it's very much that it's that level of, oh shit, you're done it now.
Yeah.
It's
like you haven't woken the lion, my friends. Yeah.
Woken the beast. Yeah. And yet, even as we have that challenge 2 or 3 times, Simba says it, and Scar tries to ignore it, and then the throwback to Mufasa, and this looks familiar, and at that point, Scar's voice has changed again. Back to that camp, softer. He's not in power. He's not in control.
Yeah.
And then you have the jump, which is physically impossible from that moment. What did you do? What the fuck? Yeah. It's almost a rocket up it. Like, how did you do that? There was nothing for your back legs to grab onto. Like, how did you? But yeah, we have that. We have the moment with Scar, and I'm going to say one line, and then I'm going to shut up and let Scummer talk. Rafiki as Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say to me, I laughed harder at that moment than any other moment in this movie. And that was fucking brilliant.
And I will say, since we are, over the course of this month, we are discussing the Disney Renaissance as a whole. And last week we did do Beauty and the Beast. This final combat scene is a lot better than the assaults on the castle.
Yes.
Like we do have our bits of comedics, slapstick with Rafiki and the Bruce Lee ninja shenanigans.
I'm kind of realizing why like Shrek had to do like fight scenes referencing things like the Matrix or whatever, because it was like almost right. We're gonna up what the Lion King did here with the Bruce Lee joke,
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is very much as well. I don't know about you, but this entire fight scene, like, yes, Bruce Lee's quote unquote in it, but anyone else look at this fight scene and keep expecting Jackie Chan to pop up?
Yeah.
Like, it's Buster Keaton meets Bruce Lee in this fight scene. It's fucking fantastic.
And we have cuts from the the big dramatic, Simba taking on his uncle, big dramatic gravitas climactic showdown, to the lighter comedic side characters bashing the hyenas about.
And I kind of like the whole thing with like they called Pumbaa a pig, and it was just like, it's like, oh, you done fucked up here, boys.
Now you've done it.
Yeah.
And the moment with Timon and Zazu of, let me out, no, let me in. This is Disney at its best. Mixing comedy and peril and terror and joy, and just, this is Disney at its very best. This is Disney so good it's better than Pixar.
Yeah.
And that is high praise. From us that's high praise.
Yeah.
And this whole movie is, until very recently, I don't think there's anything that's topped it. Like, from a quippy humor point of view, it's like Hercules and Robin Hood are my favorites, but I can say objectively this is the better film with better comedy and better elements.
Yeah.
Those movies mean something different to me, but this movie is, I absolutely understand why this got all the awards.
Yeah. Definitely.
And this movie as well, I think it wraps up a bit too quick for my liking. It's a bit too choppy. It's a bit, the plot's a bit too fast. But again, it's a kids movie. You've got 90 minutes. What are you going to do?
Yeah. I mean, this is one of those. I mean, sometimes a lot of the time, in perhaps in a way, it's a weird thing for us with some of the movies or whatever that we've probably watched, where they could have cut 15 or 20 minutes out of a movie quite easily. They could have added another 15 into this probably to wrap it up. Yeah. But
easily.
Though that being said, like, the score does a very good, very subtle transition from the ending fight scene score to back into the circle of life. Where you don't even notice that it's switching into that until it hits you in the face.
Yeah, and obviously, it ends. But obviously, this is because that is obviously the big theme of the movie, isn't it? Is the circle of life, and how really the end, it's come full circle.
Yeah,
they're holding Simba's cub up at the end there, and
and even with Scar, it's like Scar is the architect of his own demise. It's the hyenas.
Yeah, the hyenas that do him in the end.
Yeah, it's Simba who is the better quote unquote man, the better lion.
Yeah,
Even
very traditional heroic.
I mean, even though I wanted Simba to fucking kill him. I wanted Simba, but obviously, look, Simba's the hero in a Disney movie. He's not going to blatantly just murder his uncle. He's at least going to give his uncle the chance of
run away.
Basically, run away, banished. You're banished. Don't come back. and he was at least going to give him that opportunity, you know.
Yeah, and I do think as well there is that thing of, but even in that, the way Simba does it is very. It's not snide, but it is vicious, and it's a lot darker than a lot of Disney heroes.
Yeah.
Repeating the words Scar said back to him, which immediately blows it wide open. Of those words have haunted Simba.
Yeah.
For him to remember that word for word, they have haunted him, and even Scar knows those words. Scar, who picks his words so carefully, who's so manipulative, always has been, knows Simba and knows he's dead, knows he's he's done for. And it is very much that Scar knows he won't survive outside of the Pride Lands.
Yeah.
And therefore his options are right now live or die.
His options are fight or die, essentially.
But there's a very interesting blinking you miss it moment going on. So you've got Simba and Scar atop there.
Yeah.
And Simba's just about to turn away and leave Scar to run. And it's a throwback to the very start of the movie. Now, don't forget, we've got Simba in this moment who's been told by Rafiki, your father is in you.
Yeah.
And you've got then get the throwback to right at the start of the film of Mufasa telling Scar, don't turn your back on me. And then Scar said,
going,
you shouldn't turn your back on me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's when Simba goes to turn away from him because he hasn't learned that lesson yet. That's when Scar gets him in the eyes.
Oh yeah.
And
it's just because Scar's going to take a cheap shot. You know, he's going to take a cheap shot.
You cannot turn your back on Scar.
Yeah.
But Simba hasn't learned that lesson because he's not been around to learn that lesson.
Yeah.
You can't risk having Scar at your back. And it is very telling that that's the moment the lionesses get involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because again, it's that whole thing of Simba has to finish Scar off himself, but Simba cannot be the one to kill him.
Yeah.
Because Simba is the hero, Simba is the boy king, Simba is the Messiah. Simba wouldn't do that, you know, because throwing someone to the hyenas isn't murder; it's an accident. You know, it happens.
What's the it's with the hyenas there. It's kind of like I get the vibes of that. What's that Batman movie? I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what's going on in that scene with Simba. I'm not going to kill you, but I don't have to save you. And that's exactly what's going on there. And it is about as dark as a Disney villain, as a Disney hero gets in this era.
Well, any era, almost, you know.
Yeah. When last did we see a Disney hero do that?
But I'll say though, out of all like the animated Disney villains I could think of, because I watched a few. There's probably, and I'm going to say, and I know I've only watched this movie for the first time today, and it's stuck fresh in my mind. I'm trying to put this in context here.
Yeah.
But I think that is also the most satisfaction I got out of the death of a Disney villain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I genuinely got emotionally invested enough to hate Scar.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is very much it's throwing Hitler to the SS.
Yeah. Even though Scar's quite funny at times and quite witty, I genuinely dislike this character, and it was right from the beginning. I was like, oh, I already dislike this guy. You know,
I mean, Scar's a nasty piece of work, and we do understand why. When your name is garbage and you're literally treated like shit, I can understand why someone would turn out that way. So I have some sympathy in that regard, but what I don't have is I don't want this guy to win. He's funny, and I love to watch him, but I also love to watch him lose.
Yeah. And, his downfall is very much his own doing because, the
hyenas, he promised them food. Stick with me, boys, you'll never go hungry.
And
I literally, on my notes, I heard that line and I wrote on my notes, bread and circuses.
And also, of course, he, as soon as things start going badly for him, he immediately sells them out. And they were here to hear that.
Yeah. And And I think that these hyenas are very telling. You know, if again we are taking Scar and the hyenas, the film does it, so I'm taking it as given that we are support. These are proto-fascists. These
Yeah.
are animated fascists. The idea that they turn on each other, that you know they'll all do anything to survive individually. But what I think is really important in this film, particularly now looking back on it,
Yeah.
the hyenas know exactly what they're doing. The hyenas know exactly what the plan is, and they're on board.
Yeah.
Even the other hyenas who we don't see on screen, they know what's going on, and they're all for it because, you know, maybe the lions won't eat us. If we're eating, then the lions won't eat us.
Yeah.
And it is, you know, it's they voted they put a lion into power and then wondered why it turned on them. You know,
Yeah.
you know, but the leopard eating people's faces parted didn't say they were going to eat my face.
Yeah.
You know, and it is, again, it's an important lesson of they knew what they were doing. They knew what they were involved in. And the only reason they turned on it is because they were betrayed first.
Yeah.
And especially in the era where people try and claim they didn't understand or they were brainwashed or was only following orders, Your Honor.
Yeah.
Were you though? Like, because there's no differentiation in this movie at all. They knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
And they joined in gleefully. Like, even the one who's clearly like mentally a few sandwiches short of a picnic
Yeah.
knew exactly what he was doing and didn't like.
Yeah.
And they all get the same thing for it. And it is very much that case of, I don't care what's going on in your life or what history you've got, you know right from wrong. And this movie is, if there's one thing this movie does well when it does the whole proto-fascist messaging, is they know what they are doing, bring them down with no mercy.
Yeah.
Which I wish we'd internalize that message a bit more.
Yeah.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah. You wonder why the generation that was shown that grew up to punch Nazis.
Yeah.
You think? You think? But yeah. And so, and again, what I love about this and this era of Disney, this era of cinema in general, we haven't quite hit the turning point where a thematically dark movie had to be so dark you couldn't see what the fuck were going on screen. It's also nice. Like, it's nice.
Yeah, like even the thematically and darkly lit scenes are clearly visible.
Yes, and you can see what's going on, and they have a set color palette for each character. And again, this final fight scene is so overwhelming, and you have to watch it 3 or 4 times to really look at it. It's because it jumps color palettes so fast. It's like you got Scar's color palette, Simba's color palette, Timon, Pumbaa, Scar, Simba, Scar, Timon, Scar, Simba, and it doesn't stop.
Yeah.
And then in the middle of all that, you've got fire and lightning, and you've got this massive score going on in the background, and it's overwhelming. It's overstimulating.
Yeah.
And just
that's the point.
That's clearly exactly the point.
Yeah.
It's clearly exactly the point. Because I remember watching The Little Mermaid, and The Little Mermaid's final scene was not overwhelming like that.
Yeah.
It was big and it was a massive set piece.
It's another Disney film I've never watched.
or
add it to the list.
Or to compare it with its immediate predecessor, you know, Aladdin's big climax scene is very, you know, is very big and imposing, but it's simple.
Yes. And this one is very dynamic because when I say camera angles, I mean the angle that the shot was drawn from.
Yeah.
The camera angles are very dynamic, to the point where I don't know if you notice at the end of it, when Simba walks up Pride Rock and stakes his claim.
Yeah.
Because of the angle they draw it from, it looks like he's walking uphill. But in every other shot of Pride Rock in this movie, that rock is dead flat.
Yeah.
Except the shots where they're bringing the baby up, it's slightly on a tilt.
Yeah.
To show this sort
Ascension.
of ascension. Yeah, it's very obviously meant to be that way.
And
it's done it's very cleverly done. But yeah.
Okay, and I am going to bring that to parallel that with a more recent movie, one that we have already covered on Media Musings, where the scene where Miles fully comes into his own and into the Spider-Verse, when he drops off the side of the building and takes his leap of faith, the angle gets inverted, so he's rising through the frame.
Yes. It's exactly the same thing. He's rising through the frame. It's that ascension. It's that, again, it's the same messianic divine right of kings that we've been fed from the first shot of this movie.
Yeah.
It's the rightful king taking his place. It's not a usurper to the throne. It's, and again, Simba's color scheme is reds and golds, and it's bright and it's sunny.
Right.
So now that you say that, let's contrast it with Scar's taking power.
That's exactly how I was going to end that sentence. Contrast it with Scar, who's always underground, greens, greys, browns.
Well,
even his skin color is darker than.
It's darker than Mufasa or Simba's. Yeah.
No, but Scar's taking powers. It's very static because he's there giving a speech, and then the hyenas descend.
Yeah.
When he announces the dawning of the new era of hyenas and lions, coming together. And
it's like thoughts just popped into my head, and I'm sure I'm not the first person to have this thought. So if it exists on the internet, please send it to me. I could just imagine an animated video of Scar and the hyenas of A Fiddle of Gold Against Your Soul, because I think I'm better than you. And Scar as the devil and the hyenas as the demons. Like a band of demons joined in, and it sounded something like this.
Yeah.
Like that's what they're supposed to be. They are the underworld, they are evil, they are dark, they are everything bad compared to Simba and Mufasa's everything good.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting when you then look at the colouring of Nala and the lionesses.
Yeah.
Who are somewhere in between.
And
so yeah, it's an interesting one because they have to survive in both regimes.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing.
Though I will say this, touching back on be prepared, and how the and the lighting and the camera angles and everything. I'd like to see a side-by-side comparison between Be Prepared and Playing with the Big Boys.
You're playing with the big boys now.
Yeah.
Ooh, actually, I can see that.
Because, once again, both very subtly stylized, or very subtly but heavily stylized villain songs with very propagandistic presentations.
Yeah. Again, Poor Unfortunate Souls from The Little Mermaid does the same with the little things in the ground and the again, Disney had a style of villain song that it liked to do.
Yeah.
And Disney's villain songs were very proto-fascist,
Yeah, and
evil
what
that we can tell kids
and-
about World War II. Okay, Hitler. Like,
and what and what I'm saying is when when Disney had its studio schism and DreamWorks went off to make DreamWorks, they obviously took those lessons from Disney and implemented it into their own animated film craft.
Oh yeah, but I think what DreamWorks did, because I'm thinking of the King in Shrek.
Yeah.
He's the same nasty, slightly camp piece of work as Scar, but he's not so obviously modeled after a fascist dictator.
Yeah.
Like what he says is definitely fascist dictator, and some of you will die, and that's a risk I am willing to take.
Yeah. Well, also he is literally a satire of Michael Eisner.
Yeah.
So it's very
which I'm on board with. I'm on board with anyone dissing Michael Eisner. So.
But there is a reason why I bring up Prince of Egypt so much in this, because Prince of Egypt was essentially DreamWorks. Well, not only was it their premiere video, but it was also their Disney killer done in the style of the Disney Renaissance. And
I will say, of all the Disney villain movies I watched at that age, Playing with the Big Boys is the one that gave me nightmares.
Yeah.
Really got into my head. It does feel like what DreamWorks did is spend years and years and years watching Disney, watching what Disney was good at and what Disney wasn't so good at, learning from that, and then going, right, let's fix it.
Yeah.
Let's not make their mistakes.
Yeah.
Scar's name was Taka in the movie. I don't know where you've got that bit of information from, but it is canon that Scar's real name was Taka, which, again.
Yeah, I think that's in the Lion King prequel novel or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I actually first read it in the Lion King book that Disney released a few years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the book they released a few years ago, it's Ascari, which does mean soldier. You are right. But I think prior to that there was
there's a Tale of Two Brothers. It's Scar's backstory.
Yeah. So again, there's different backstories and different names. But on the Disney wiki, for example, in A Tale of Two Brothers, Scar was once named Taka, and that's where the name comes from. I don't know if Ascari is if Taka's a nickname or whatever, but again, it's possible they're both something like that, and we're both right, which I absolutely fully accept. But both names do appear on the Disney wiki for this character.
So, given, a certain badger could have some words about how Disney treats canon.
Yeah. Or whether or not Disney even is canon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's one of those things. I think it's quite possible that Taka was some sort of nickname in the Roman fashion of names given that are not meant to be. Famously, there's a tradition. Bootsies. If you're given a name like that, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be something you want to be called.
Yeah.
It's generally if someone, and there's generally a little rule from history there. If don't elevate someone who's insecure about their childhood nickname to the position of Emperor of Rome.
Yeah. And it is one of those things of don't elevate someone who's that insecure that they can't take a joke. So yeah, it's like famously, Stalin was known as Cub. But before then there was another name, and he chose the name Cub because he couldn't stand the other name.
Yeah.
Oh no, they called him Cub, and then he changed to Stalin.
Well, they all kind of changed their names. A lot of the Bolshevik leaders, and I mean, so.
But again, it's one of those things.
I think it's Yubashvili or something. I think his real name was.
Yeah. It's one of those things where if you've got a nickname that infantilizes, feminizes, or otherwise humiliates you, it means the people around you like you. Don't try and change it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like there's the thing Americans don't understand, right? When the Russians called Margaret Thatcher the Iron Lady, that was
meant as an insult.
Yeah.
That was actually meant as an insult. It was sort of like it's one of those sort of like insults that she herself actually ended up running with, though, because it actually kind of was flattering to her in a certain way. At least here, it was kind of flattering to her.
Yeah, because the translation was a bit off, and the cultural mores were not there. But again, if you can run with an insulting nickname, it probably serves you better in the long run.
Yeah.
If you can swallow your pride.
And obviously, you know, Scar couldn't, because he couldn't even stand to have his brother's name mentioned in his presence.
Exactly. Scar was, you know.
Also, the pride was a bit big for him to swallow.
Yeah. It's like the whole pride. Hey. I was waiting for someone to come up with that.
How did that joke not make it into the movie itself?
Oh no, actually.
Because the idea of cannibalism's one step too far for Disney.
Yeah.
That's what HBO's for.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I think it was DreamWorks who did the first proper cannibalism joke, wasn't it? In Shrek with the
Probably. I mean, Shrek probably did break a lot of the taboos for sneaking in jokes that didn't hit. So
yeah, there were a couple of
squeeze the jelly from your eyes.
Yeah,
actually, it's quite good on toast.
Yeah. But again, we keep talking about DreamWorks, and then we've not done a DreamWorks movie this month, and I'm just like, what have we done?
Well, because the rise of DreamWorks is, you know, basically a direct result of the Disney Renaissance, or more accurately, the managerial schism that happened, you know, in the mid to late Disney Renaissance.
Yeah. So it is, you know, but what we're saying with this movie is it's very complex for a Disney movie, first of all. Like, if we're going to start to wrap up, because we've been going nearly twice the runtime, more than the runtime, this is a complex movie for a kids' movie. It's a movie well worth looking into.
I mean, that might as well be a tagline for whenever Media Musings does a kids movie, like with the aside, you know, with the exception of Beauty and the Beast. We say that every time we cover a kid, you know, a quote unquote kids movie.
Yeah, but the thing is, this movie was not made for kids, and I don't believe that for a second, because there's way too many jokes in there that go over kids' heads.
It was made for parents, really.
Yeah. And that quote I read out at the start of this movie was made for adults.
Yeah.
But was frankly quite weird. Yes.
Like I definitely say that, you know, The Lion King is what I what I'd call a family movie, where it's accessible to the children, but it's also got stuff for the adults to latch onto, both in humor and thematically.
Yeah.
But actually, that kind of leads directly into my portion of shilling. So, so early last week, Surus released a video about how it's okay to, like content that is directed at children. And I very much largely agree with the message of the video. However, I'm still going to be responding to it.
Of course.
Because while it's very good on a, single person level mental health kind of chat, there are a couple points in the video that acknowledges the grander scope of the problem, but does not address it. And so I feel like I need to respond in light of the, grander, the bigger cultural attitude and why that is a problem.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think, having not seen the video you're talking about, I think it's all well and good when you talk about it's okay to like kids' films.
Yeah.
It's okay to like kids' media as an adult. Hell, it's okay to write fan fiction and make fan art as an adult. Like the fandom wouldn't exist without adults. Being engaged in fandom requires a certain level of disposable income that little Jimmy on his $5 a week allowance just ain't got. But having been of an age where I remember the bronies, where I remember the Snape wives, where I remember problems in fandom with adults not appropriately tagging their content, not appropriately limiting their content, and then children being exposed to that. There used to be a time you couldn't Google My Little Pony even with safe search on.
Yeah, well, no, this is like a response of how do you respond when someone tells you shouldn't be engaging in this media because you're an adult.
Well, this is the thing I'm getting to. We had those eras.
Yeah.
And now we have the backlash of those eras by kids who weren't there. And you see it all the time, kids coming into adult fandoms.
Yeah.
And trying to claim ground. And look, I am all for, if you are a kid and you are interested in an adult fandom and you want to talk about it and you want to be online with, great. Your parents should be monitoring what you're watching and talking about until you're an adult.
Yeah.
But B, you do not have the right to come into a fandom space. I don't care if it's a fandom for the fucking Teletubbies. You do not have the right to come into a fandom and tell anyone that they don't belong there.
Yeah.
Your right to engage with the media safely stops other people's right to produce what they like. And as long as everyone's tagging appropriately and people aren't looking at deliberately seeking out what they don't want to look at, I've got no argument with what goes on in fandom. That makes me a dirty pro shipper, but oh well. Just if you're going to be involved in fandom, use your brain. Yeah. Mix with your own peers. Tag your shit. Like, not all of us want to see My Little Pony porn. Okay?
Yeah.
But also parents have got a responsibility to monitor their children if their children are engaging in fandom. And even the children themselves have a responsibility not to seek out shit that's problematic to them. Yeah. You don't get to come into a fandom and tell other people they don't belong there because you don't like it. That's not how the internet works. That's not how fandom works. Fandom has existed long before a lot of these little brats who are doing that now were born. Like, there are little brats who have literally been alive for less time than I've been in fandom. who got out of their way to tell me that I shouldn't exist in certain fandoms because of the content I create and the conversations I have. Well, kid, my profile says no under 18, so why the fuck are you in my remit? Like, go back to the kiddie corner. And it is a problem of the internet no longer has flash-based websites where kids can go and dress up dollies and talk about shit that's heavily moderated, but have conversations somewhere. They're all just on Twitter, and that's a problem. So yeah. And I just completely derailed what you were saying. But that's my rant on that topic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it doesn't acknowledge the wider problem with our attitude in regards to media that has been broadly labeled as just for kids, things like animation, things like comic books, things like video games.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to say it
the
outright. If you're
results,
still calling animation just for kids, you're 20 years behind and you need to catch up.
yeah, and while it makes good points, and while it's very much, I'd like, if you want to just save on spoons and not directly engage in the wider conversation for the sake of your mental health, it's good advice, but it's missing the bigger picture, and there is a problem with the scope of the video.
Okay, well, let's wait to see how you respond to that.
Yeah. But I was gonna make a Twitter and YouTube channel announcement yesterday before I announced it here, but it slipped my mind, so expect a Twitter/YouTube community announcement in the next few hours. And with that brief pseudo tangent out of the way, any other final thoughts, or shall we just continue to shilling?
Well, I've got something to shill in a second if no one else has got anything to say. But
I think just before shilling, I will say final thoughts on this movie. It stands up.
Yeah.
Like, you could actively put this in a cinema alongside Encanto, Frozen, and it would stand up.
Yeah. Like, Disney didn't need to make a live action shot for shot remake. They could have just re-released it into theaters.
yeah.
They
did not need to do that at all.
I think they quote unquote needed to do it for like copyright trademark reasons, but like I'm pretty sure the live action remake was more a let's hang on to the copyright rather than rather than we need to make more money off the Lion King, because if they needed to make more money off the Lion King, they would have just done another theatrical re-release.
Yeah, the Disney Vault exists for a reason.
Yeah. Any final thoughts, Chaos?
I don't think anything that hasn't been commented, no.
Okay. Well, since we're with that, we'll continue back to shilling. So expect that video response Wednesday, because it really seems to work for my schedule to film on Monday and release on Wednesday. And also next week we are covering Disney's Hercules for the late Disney Renaissance, and then for February, scheduled to be announced, but we're doing Classical Reception Month as a kind of bridge between Hercules and the Sandman.
Cool. The Hercules soundtrack is on Spotify. It's only about 13 minutes long total. Well worth listening to before next week. It puts a pep in your step in the morning if you Listen to it on the commute. Ask me how I know. I'll tell you next week.
So what are you shilling, Scummer?
Okay, tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. UK time. So that's about 2 p.m. Eastern, I believe. I've got John Hamill coming onto the channel. We're gonna have a long chat about everybody's favourite atheist organisation, Atheist Alliance International. As people know, I've been covering that absolute shit show for a little while now. Well, John's been covering it since it happened. Like, his knowledge on it is like, he knows way more about it than me. We're going to have a little look through, especially their little EGM that they had recently, which is, it's for those who don't know, AAI is literally on a definition of, but wait, there's more.
Though
So,
I think WotC is kind of giving AAI a run for their money.
They really are
for the moment.
Yeah.
Like I am full on ready to nominate Wizards of the Coast / Hasbro for a Cody for next year.
Yeah, they're on. I think they're probably they're an early front runner, I think.
Yeah, very much so.
Chaos, got anything to show?
No, I've got a couple of background things eventually coming, but nothing in short enough term to be worth mentioning now.
Okay. And with that, we'll move on to tagline. So, Scummer?
I don't really do taglines, do I? So, just say, hey, I enjoyed The Lion King. That'll be it.
Yep. Chaos?
Yes. Well, have a day, and remember, communication is key.
And remember, take care, be good. And if you can't be good, use your noodle.
And remember, the purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think on. Too often, we forget that.